a very New Englandy detail. So on the money side of the house, the front side of the house, you put clapboard. But on the sides that don't show, you put cedar shingles because they were less expensive. And I'm not a Yankee, but I love Yankee frugality. And it's like one of the things I absolutely love. Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Design Editor Kiley Jacques.
Hello.
Deputy Editor Matt Milham.
What up?
And Producer Jeff Rose.
Howdy.
Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. So we continue to hear from folks who answered our question about, is there anything inherently wrong with a 9,000 square foot net zero energy retrofit?
Yeah, deep energy retrofit on a gigantic house.
Yeah. What do you think about that? We didn't talk to you
I wasn't here for that one, yeah.
Well, let's start with that because everyone heard what we had to say about it, and Rob.
I wish I had heard what you had to say, but you know me, I'm not in favor of that. I live small, and I support people who do.
What about
Likewise.
like trying to make something that's an energy hog better?
Sure. Well, there's that, but I would argue to start with something small. I mean, I just don't see
why you need.
I mean, what did you guys?
What if
have
you
to
had a
say?
really big family? Like
how big?
Like 100 people.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a really hard time getting behind that kind of square footage. But, there's something to be said for the person who wants to try to improve it.
I don't want to... Why don't you paraphrase what... You and I came down in pretty much the same spot.
Yeah, to me, I mean, the whole concept, I think they're trying to bring this house to like net zero. And to me, it's sort of like a weird concept, the whole thing. I mean, just the idea of net zero, because you can just accomplish that by taking any crappy house and just pile solar panels on it
without
run
doing
everything
anything.
Electric and don't do anything. And,
Okay.
You're not really doing that much, in terms of like adding carbon into the atmosphere,
Right.
going that route.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the production of the solar panels, but then you're not producing any, going forward. So like it's all embodied energy, and you basically get to pay that back over time.
And we both, though, considered all of this makes money for a lot of tradespeople and gives them interesting projects that otherwise they wouldn't have to do.
Yeah.
And, it's like
That's an interesting
you need to
perspective,
make
yeah.
people need to make a living in this country, and a lot of people depend on residential construction for that.
Was that house, how old was it? Did they say?
I
Ish?
remember the 80s, but I don't know if that's true. But we'll dig into that.
Okay.
Anyway, we heard from Joseph from Central Texas on this subject, and he says, hello. Hopefully my email isn't too late. I have listened to the podcast since the beginning and enjoy the conversations. My in-laws live in what I would describe as the ultimately low-energy home. They raised 3 kids in a 1960s 1,200-square-foot house and turned the AC on only in the summer. The embodied energy in the home is extremely low. They made one modest remodel to add a laundry room. I bet their energy bill is $60 a month, even though the house has minimal green energy improvements. When I see monster green homes on This Old House and Matt Reisinger's YouTube channel, it makes me think it's just a way for wealthy people to feel better about their consumption. I've heard in this podcast and elsewhere that the justification for energy standards in the building code is not for safety, but for the betterment of society. Have we ever said that?
I don't know that we've said that, but that is not wrong, I would say.
What do you think, Kiley?
And it's not,
Yeah.
well, I wouldn't say that it's not wrong. It's not wrong, but it's not necessarily the betterment of society. There's a lot of stuff tied into there,
Right.
which is like our sort of dependence or infatuation with oil.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sort of lack of political and societal will to change away from that. There's also a big, oil, natural gas, coal lobby
Yeah?
influencing things. And there are national security concerns because we don't want to be too dependent on other people for the resources that it takes to heat our homes and power our cars and things like that. So one way to sort of conserve what we have is to make homes more efficient and cars and all that.
Maybe I'm being
Well
obtuse,
said.
but like what does that have to do with the building code? We don't say it's actually contrary to what you're pointing out to me, is that despite these interests that are trying to get us to consume stuff, this is a step back from that.
Right. Well, there was a point not too long ago where Congress was threatening essentially to step in to mandate higher energy code requirements, and the code essentially gave in because they didn't want the government to get
tell them what to do.
involved to tell them what to do. So they basically bent a little bit just so the government wouldn't come in and say and mandate these things.
Interesting.
Is my understanding of it.
We might hear from some folks who disagree with that perspective, but I welcome all feedback with regard to this conversation.
Interested to hear from the ICC on that.
Yeah.
Betterment of society is a more succinct way of putting it all.
I would argue that in some ways it's not necessarily for the betterment of society, because the way that they essentially didn't steer anything away from hydrocarbons. They just enabled it to last longer.
Yeah, but the emphasis is definitely on conserving energy, not using more of it. I mean, don't you think that's the right way to go?
It's a way to go, but I mean, it gets at it gets at an issue, but it doesn't necessarily get at the problem. I mean, because it's not going to it's going to delay climate effects, but it's not going to eliminate them.
That's probably true of
That's
most action.
Pretty interesting perspective there. So I mean, I think that the best energy is the energy you don't use from a conservation point, right? You're not adding the carbon to the atmosphere. You're not getting the energy. Why not save as much as you possibly can?
Well, I mean, if you're getting your energy from the sun, it's coming in anyway. You're not actually, if you're just using that energy to create heat, that is heat that the sun would have been dumping onto the planet anyway.
Sure. I think folks, and myself included, would argue, though, we need energy all the time, but the sun and wind don't blow all the time. So what do we do in those instances when you don't have sun or wind?
Yeah. Batteries.
Batteries? There's no environmental impact with batteries, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of storage methods that you can use, but I mean, we don't need to get into all that.
No, it's interesting.
Digress.
It's a very complex issue.
Yeah.
So he says the code is not for safety, but for the betterment of society. So the same logic follows that the code could limit the size of a house per person for the betterment of society, or anything over, say, 500 square feet per person, you could tax the hell out of them.
Amen.
Yeah.
He concludes, a 9,000 square foot net zero remodel reminds me of a bathroom remodel I did in a mansion on Lake Travis. Lake Travis is near Austin, Texas, so for context. Central Texas. While I was there, the owner was installing a rainwater collection system, a complex and expensive system to make him feel good about keeping his yard green in Central Texas, which we should point out is a desert. The funny thing was that right behind his house was the ultimate rainwater collection system, Lake Travis.
Yeah, but he probably couldn't suck water out of Lake
Right.
Travis.
I looked this up, and Lake Travis is part of the Colorado River, and you can't just take water out of the Colorado River because those are negotiated
highly
amongst
regulated.
the states.
Wasn't
who
the
use
entire
water.
Colorado River diverted to Las Vegas?
I don't know.
Isn't that where the water for Vegas originally came from? I think there's something to that.
Yeah, it's the Colorado that is in Lake Mead, right?
Yeah, Lake Mead and the Glen Canyon Dam, I think.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
I think we're getting way into things we should not be talking about.
Yeah, geography
What do you know
is not
about
our
this,
strong point.
Jeff?
Which part?
Western rivers. What?
So I have a question about, he said that the embodied energy in this house is extremely low, but how does he know that? I mean, yes, it's been captured, so there, but how do you determine the embodied energy of an existing house? I mean, of a house that you have moved into.
I don't know that, except to say that it hasn't been remodeled, so the original embodied energy that went into
It's
building
trapped,
is
right.
it's the same as
Yeah.
what it is now.
Yeah, but you don't know that it's low.
But if somebody, well, I think we could assume it's probably lower than a modern home with the materials we're using today. It used to be that building materials did not come from very far away,
that's
right?
true.
It's
Yeah,
like if you needed brick, you got clay from the ground nearby. If you wanted sand for concrete, you got it close by. If you need gravel, it comes, Now we get stuff from all over the place.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, Joseph, thank you very much. And we hope we'll hear from other folks about our query. It's a complex thing. We also heard from Brian. A couple of years ago, I sent in a question about my small barn, which you answered on the show in episode 91. Well, not you exactly. The hosts were Justin, Brian, and Rob back then. I wanted advice on restoring or tearing down this building. It was a split vote, but I decided to take Brian's advice and save it. As promised, here's an update. I raised the building on cribbing, poured new footings, installed a floor, built new doors. There's probably not a single true 90-degree angle in this place, but words like level and plumb are relative in a structure this old. Photos are attached. I love all the new voices on the podcast, though I miss listening to Justin haze everybody now and again. Keep up the great work.
He still does. It's just all off air.
So I contacted Brian yesterday, and I asked, would he do this again, right? I think it's a fair question.
What do you
and
say?
I also listened to the show to hear what the guys had to say. So let's hear what Brian had to say. I'm glad I went the restoration route. It definitely cost me less in terms of building material, but there's no doubt it was way more work. I had done interior cabinetry work before, but I really hadn't had any experience house framing. So it was easier for me to wrap my head around repairing the existing building than tearing it down and starting from scratch. It was a great way to learn. Awesome, right?
Your kind of guy.
He's my kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a relatively low stakes thing because it's a shed, not a
Yeah,
house.
it's not like he was
Sure
living
looks
in there.
like it.
Right?
It's beautiful.
He did a
I
fantastic
love it.
job.
It is
I'd
gorgeous.
live in it.
Brian, you did great, and I love your color scheme, and I love how you maintained the look of the historic structure, but made it usable. It's what a talk about preserving or reducing energy in a project, right? And instead of tearing this down and starting from scratch, you're using what's there.
Brian Pontilillo will be proud.
So those of you who are curious what some of my colleagues said about this, Rob Yegid suggested that the boards could become furniture. Justin said, no, this is also Rob. Rob said, you're not going to get this thing straight, square, and tidy. I don't know.
Looks pretty good.
Brian says there's not a straight surface in there, but it looks good from what we can see.
Yeah.
Justin says, I love old stuff, but I don't think I'd save this thing. And Brian, I think, summed it up. If you're not handy, let it go. But it looks like a fun project. So I think Brian would agree.
I think if I had been in the room when we got that question back then,
Yeah.
I probably would have said knock it down too.
I think
just
I would have
it
said
was
knock
so
it
wonky.
down. I would have said knock it down too.
But it's amazing
I
what
wonder
this
how
guy
much
did
of
with
the
it.
original structure he was able to salvage. The framing.
Sounds like he just
all of it.
raised it up and
Put new-
straightened it out a little bit.
Put new pieces where he had to.
Yeah.
So all of the exterior siding is what it was?
It looks to me like it's the,
I guess you're right.
clapboard, but I'm not really sure.
I'm just really amazed at how that roof got straightened out.
I know.
That's like probably one of the most.
Did you
crazy
fix that
things
in
to me.
Photoshop, Jeff?
I did not.
Okay.
So the backside looks like he might have added on to it, though, right? No?
Well, let's
I
see
don't
the
know.
back. Oh, so what I love about this, okay, so this is a very, very New Englandy detail. So on the money side of the house, the front side of the house, you put clapboard, but on the sides that don't show, you put cedar shingles because they were less expensive. And I'm not a Yankee, but I love Yankee frugality, and it's like one of the things I absolutely love.
We're less expensive.
Whatever I was going to say, that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's a fun fact.
Yeah, if you look at like historic homes, oftentimes the backside will have cedar shingles and the front will have claps, and the sides
So
can
sharp.
have either.
This guy
Sometimes
has
both.
a great design sense, I'd say.
Yes, it's super sharp. And he takes a good picture. Okay. Well, it's always a pleasure to hear from listeners who check in with updates on their projects, so please do that. So
This is my favorite
this
email
is
of the week.
definitely my favorite too.
I hadn't looked at this until just now.
I laughed so hard when I saw this over the weekend.
So Zachary writes in, hello, FHB podcast. I just listened to episode 211, and I love the idea of an FHB spinner to help with making decisions so much that I decided to design one. Attached is both a PDF and an image file of the wheel I design. Feel free to use or completely disregard. Either way is fine. Fine. I just had a bunch of fun making this. And even better, Jeff has animated this to actually make it spin. Look at this. So for those of you who are listening, it's our faces, Matt, Rob, Kiley, and myself, and they're on a colored backgrounds, much like what's that game, Twister,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like a Twister spinner, and then all but one of them say air seal, and the other one says cut and cobble. So
Above your head.
It looks like he mined pictures from Facebook or something like that.
something.
I think it's from our
webpage, right?
Yes.
I don't know that that's mine from there. That's like from back when I was
You
in
look
school.
like a serial killer.
Yeah.
You're the second person to say that. Jeff said that earlier
The first one was
today.
the FBI. Yeah.
Rob's looking a little questionable too.
So
That's funny.
you all have to go to the podcast page and check out the spinner. And my God, maybe we can make it spin on the website. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, we need a life-size version of it.
Jeff's looking at me like, don't give me any more work to do. Oh, that's so good. Zachary, thank you so much. That is just super fun. And I'm sure we're going to need that in the upcoming episodes.
Probably.
Yeah.
I
Maybe right
need
now.
So what have you been doing?
Well, I had a little fire in my oven that scared the dickens out of me and got me thinking, it smoked me out, and it took me a bit to get it out. And
So did your smoke detectors work and stuff?
actually, it's interesting. It was so far deep into the oven that the smoke detector didn't pick up on it.
You better make sure that's working.
It is
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
because then I also boiled over some rice on the top, and that set it off. And anyway, the long and the short of it is I had to really deal with my oven, but it got me thinking about air quality of my house, and I went down to check the filter on my furnace, and that was disgusting. And it just got me thinking about air quality and how to improve it. And I'm giving some thought to buying an air purifier.
So
what
the
are your thoughts on
evidence
that?
is that they do squat.
Squat.
Yeah.
It's all about ventilation.
I think it's a mix on that. I mean, definitely Martin Holliday, he wrote an article on that a couple of years ago maybe, and his take was that they're garbage. But then
But if you
the New York
can't-
Times Wirecutter, like they actually tested a bunch of these things, and they did find that some of them actually do work well. And I ended up buying one of those, and it does seem to work.
Yeah.
So
I
what-
wouldn't say it's as good as having some sort of like ventilation that kicks
Whole
everything
house,
out of
yeah.
the house or anything.
So tell me, what does it do? Does it have a filter in there, or is it an electrostatic precipitator?
It's got both. The one that I have, it's from
Okay.
Koway, I think it's called. And
So what
yeah,
does this thing cost?
I don't remember. It was probably
Hundreds?
it was maybe a couple $100. I can't remember exactly how much it was.
Less
It
than
was
a
years ago
new
that I bought
hood,
this.
right?
It was much less than a hood. I don't really have. There's not really a good way for me to get a range hood.
Same here.
It has HEPA filter, charcoal filter, and then I think the electrostatic thing. And it seems to do a good job. The filter gets real dirty, and have to change it pretty regularly. But
And where do you have this thing?
right above the stove.
Okay. So this is like capturing cooking grease and stuff like that
Yeah,
too?
it's capturing all kinds of nastiness.
Okay. I'm skeptical, but I don't have any evidence to support my position. So, except that, Martin Holliday,
Yeah, he was real down on him.
he was real down
but
on
I
him.
don't know that he did any. I'm
Trials.
almost positive that he didn't test them himself.
Yeah. Well, he looked at actually people who had
Yeah.
researched their efficacy,
Yeah.
and he concluded that their science was sound and says they don't work. So I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Scott Gibson has a piece on, I don't need to monitor my air quality because I know it's horrible, but if somebody's interested in monitoring their house air quality, there's a number of devices that seem kind of cool. One is Spec, the other is Blue Air Aware. That one has a built-in automatically activated air purifier, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do to find out what's going on in your house.
Yeah, mine's
If it's not
automatically-
obvious.
Yeah, mine comes on whenever. And the thing is, it seems to work because as soon as you turn on the oven, pretty much, it kicks on. When I was doing the polyurethane on my door in my basement the other day, the thing kicked on like about 5
So
minutes
it's
after.
it's actually actively monitoring the air and then turning on and off as
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll have to figure out what
interested
that
in
is.
And it's
put
crazy
a-
the stuff that it picks up.
Let's put a link on the podcast page to whatever it is you bought, because I'm sure people will be curious.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll send us a half dozen to do a trial.
Yeah. That would be fantastic. Put them all around my house.
I want one.
What do you think about this, Jeff? Is this science or is this hokum?
I mean, I think it's probably a matter of degree. It's like, it's going to take out dust. It's going to, and depending upon the one Matt's got sounds pretty robust.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if a filter on a furnace works, then, this is essentially the same kind of element in it, along with a charcoal filter and the electrostatic thing. So,
all right.
But
The irony was that I wanted to really clean out my oven, so I went to buy something to do that, and it was so toxic. I thought, well, this is dumb.
It's better to breathe
put that
smoke.
back on the shelf. Right?
yeah,
Elbow grease.
The main thing is that it's only getting the air that's like in front of it. It's not, they're made for relatively small spaces. They're not going to like clean your entire
your
house
house,
because
yeah.
it's, it's not going to be able to circulate all of that air.
Right.
Martin was talking at our summit about how research has suggested even low levels of carbon dioxide can affect our mental acuity.
Oh, sure.
And some new research is supporting that. But these filter things are not going to do anything to like bring a fresh air or oxygen into your house.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's a two-prong
Right,
problem.
right.
So you have contaminants that you can filter out, but you also need fresh air that has oxygen to keep
Right.
you.
That's why I open my windows and doors when I run my wood stove.
Doesn't it make it cold in there?
That's why
You
we
have a
all
small house.
Yeah.
leaky houses. That's why people were smarter back then. Leaky houses.
What have you been doing?
Just that door. I talked about it last time. So I got a really.
So you got the door though.
I got the door, picked it up. I was told, and I hadn't actually looked at the labels when I was sort of selecting this door, that it didn't have any low E coatings, and I could put it any way I wanted. And then I got it home and I actually looked at the label, and it is an argon-filled double pane, low E coating. So I have to face it one direction, and it is a little dinged up. So I was hoping to turn it, a particular way, and it just lucked out that I am able to turn it that way.
So in the world of Matt, does one put the good side out that other people will see, or do you put the good side in that you could look at?
I was probably going to put the good side in, because out it goes into a breezeway that is basically right now my junk pile of like all the stuff that like all these Amazon boxes and stuff that I haven't
You've
bundled
been saying
up yet.
that since I met you.
Yeah, no, and it's like a recurring issue. As soon as you clean it out, then it turns right back into the storage area. And especially in the winter when you can't bring stuff out to burn because everything's wet.
Isn't that where the woman that you bought the house from used to eat?
Yeah, well, at least in the summer. It's an unconditioned space, but that was where her dining table was for like all the, the nice weather. And then she had another dining table in the basement.
Oh, that's right. That was the weird part.
Yeah.
The basement's weird.
Yeah.
Dining alone in the
It's
basement.
just such an oddly,
Sounds so sad.
just such an odd house. There really isn't a good place for a dining table in it.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So you have this door now. Have you mortised it for hinges and the lock set and stuff?
I haven't done that. The only thing I've done is cut out. Well, I've sanded it. I've polyed one side, and I've done the cutout for the cat door.
But you haven't put the cat door in.
Haven't put the cat door in.
How'd you
'cause I
cut
got
the door?
I used a drill and just drilled out the corners, and then
Jigsaw?
Yeah, I was going to use the track saw that I just bought, but
That seems like a pretty small hole for a track saw.
Overkill.
Yeah. So I was like, nah.
But I don't know how you resist it. I would have had to use it.
I know. Well, I didn't have anything set up to be able to sort of like prep the track, because you got to run the saw along once to get the zero clearance thing set up and everything. And I was like,
Do you know what he's talking about?
The zero clearance? No.
So the track saw's track has a plastic strip along the edge. And the first time you use it, the saw blade cuts through it and makes it so it's tight to the blade for subsequent cuts, which minimizes chipping.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it also allows you to register it exactly on a mark without having an offset for the blade or what have you.
Yeah. So
You just have to remember to put the track on the piece you're keeping and put the off cut so it falls away.
right.
Yeah. Or
So
you
you
end
get
up
width
cutting
right.
it with
Right.
leaving the kerf.
Right.
So that's a great way to bevel the door, though. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
So on the latch side of the door, you have to put a 7-degree bevel on it so it doesn't hit as you close it. Otherwise, you would need a reveal that was much wider, right?
Yeah.
So the track saw is the way people in the modern world do it. You used to have to do that with a hand plane or a power plane, and now it's much faster and easier.
Or they come with it.
With a bevel on it, yeah. But
Is
not what
yours-
you're doing, though, right? You just have a blank.
That is a good question. I've bought a bunch of other blanks from this same store, and they came with a bevel on them, and there were no hinges or anything in those, and so I don't know. I haven't actually looked to see, but to my recollection, this does not have a bevel on it.
What'd you pay for that?
$395.
For just a blank door.
Yeah, but it's half glass. It's got a gigantic, basically half of the door is glass. One single
Gotcha.
gigantic.
So 400.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair deal. I think that's
Yeah.
probably half of what you would pay for that from new whatever.
Yeah.
Wow. I've never priced a door. I didn't know
They're
they were so
expensive.
expensive.
Yeah.
Unless they're complete crap,
Right.
and then they're still expensive.
Yeah.
So I have nothing to add to this except that I want to remind folks that the week between Christmas and New Year's, I will be in Pittsburgh, and I'm hoping to arrange a meetup with podcast listeners at some mutually agreed upon place that is cheap and
That serves adult beverages.
That's
all
fun.
those things. Yeah.
Did you start a meetup group?
Well, we haven't heard from anybody yet because the first time I mentioned this, the show hasn't even aired. So by the time this airs, we're going to have like dozens of people. You coming?
All your fans will be there.
You coming? You're going to miss
To your
it?
meetup? I don't think so.
Oh, man. You're going to miss out. I'd buy you a
I
beer.
meet up with you every day. That's enough.
I also wanted to share with something that Andy Gray sent me this morning, and it's always good to hear from him. He's a remodeler, roofer, Renaissance man in Ligonier, Pennsylvania, which is in the Allegheny Mountains, I think. And so he says, we all get the Harbor Freight coupons in the mail. Most times I find at least one worth clipping. Owing to all the coupons, I've tried more than a few Harbor Freight items over the years. Not all have wowed me, but some are absolute steals, and I use them all the time. And, like, I was immediately grabbed when I read this. I was like, yeah.
Do you get them?
Oh, yeah.
I don't get them, but I'm not a builder, so.
You just have to go to the store one time, and you'll get ceaseless
give him your
marketing
email.
material.
Yep.
Okay.
You could probably sign up online. You don't even need to go to the store.
You know what? That'll deal with your kindling problem.
I don't
Use all
have
those
a kindling
flyers.
problem now that I work in a
okay.
publishing house.
Yeah.
He says flux brushes. I use a lot of flux brushes for soldering, woodworking, glue-ups. They're a must-have. I use them to touch up paint, especially fastener heads with spray paint sprayed on a scrap board as a palette. Do you know what he's saying there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So he has a can of spray paint. He needs to put fasteners through whatever he sprayed, and then he doesn't have a can of paint, so he just sprays some spray paint on a board and then uses the flux brush to then coat the head of a nail or screw or whatever. He says, my big box sells 5 stubby Reed Worthless acid brushes for $1.99. I get a 36-pack at Harbor Freight for $2.49. He says, tarps. I should say that as roofers, our tarps are more disposable variety than heirlooms, and any deficiency in quality goes unnoticed. He says he pays about half the price as the big box stores for his tarps.
What's an heirloom tarp? I like the sound of it.
You don't have a tarp that was handed down from your grandmother?
Made of burlap.
Yeah. Made by hand on a loom.
Oh, that's funny. He says bungee cords, ropes, and ratchet straps. I have a lot of trailers and trucks with ladder racks, and something always needs to be tied down. Again, the price is half. You know those bungees and ratchet straps you sometimes see lying alongside the road? Those are probably mine.
They do. The ratchet straps are fine.
Yeah, I
I've
believe
got
it.
a bunch of them. They're tarps, garbage.
Yeah.
You don't like the tarps?
I mean, they're fine for like covering stuff to bring it to the dump. But
Yeah,
like anything I actually want to keep dry.
And so, like, when he's doing roofing, they're putting a tarp on the ground, and they're going to fill it with asphalt shingles and
Yeah.
roofing nails and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
like, why spend a lot of money on that tarp?
Yeah, my main issue with them is that the grommets tear out almost immediately. It seems
And there's
like.
not a lot of them, right? That's the
Yeah.
difference between a good tarp and a cheap one is the number of grommets and how sturdy they are.
Yeah.
The fabric varies, too. He says he gets 21-inch bungee cords for $13.99. Extension cords, 12-wire cords are about the same no matter what you pay for them. I've had great luck with the Harbor Freight cords, and they even have some fancier options that are more supple with lighted or multi-end plugs. A 12-gauge 50-foot triple tap costs $42.15.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to even find like a 12 gauge in the box stores. It
It's
seems
at
like.
least, it's
yeah,
at
it
least
was
$100.
Yeah.
Wait, for how long?
50-foot.
Oh, I priced them this weekend, actually, ironically.
What'd you get?
Yeah.
What'd you see?
I got 12 gauge, 25 feet, 36, or actually closer to $40.
So that he gets almost twice the cord for
Yeah.
the same amount.
Yeah.
99-cent flashlights. I have a gazillion of these. A pretty easy to find free coupon is available, so I get one with every stop and stash them everywhere. Yeah, they're cheaply made, but they come with batteries, and any flashlight is a godsend when you're in the dark. And I was like, that's a good point, right? Casters. I have a small workshop, so I'm forever building rolling tables and stands. The 3-inch poly swivel caster is $5.99. Moving blankets. I can't have enough of these. I do handyman work, and they're great for covering furniture and flooring. I can throw them in the washing machine, and they get grungy, too. When they get grungy, too. The 40 by 70 will set you back $5. Small parts assortments. I keep several kits on hand of all the stuff that is most likely to go flying into the great beyond during dis or reassembly. Things like woodruff keys, E-clips, snap rings, and set screws. I probably wouldn't leave any of these parts inside a transmission, but I think they're fine for most things, and they have saved my day more than once. A lifetime supply of roll pins costs $6.99.
What are roll pins?
It's like this little tube that you put to like secure a pulley to a shaft, or
Okay.
anytime there's like something that goes on a shaft and it's not supposed to spin, you put a roll pin through it.
Gotcha.
Does that seem like a reasonable description?
Yeah.
Magnetic parts trays, that's another one of the free coupons I've seen. These are great for some assembly required jobs with tiny parts. They're essential for ceiling fan assembly to keep track of those little lock washers for the blade screws. Oh my God, I know what he's talking about. So the blades don't come on the motor, right? So you have to put them on as you're assembling them, and then you're trying to get these tiny screws started into the fan mounts, and boy, they go flying. 5-gallon buckets. We don't do drywall in-house anymore, so we don't generate used buckets. I use a lot for tile, painting, basically whatever. I want to carry up to 5 gallons of something in a container with a handle. I can get the price down to $2.28 each with the right coupon. So there you go. Andy's 10 things to buy at Harbor Freight. Seems like a winner there.
He might be more frugal than you. I don't think I
that
can't
great?
imagine that.
Isn't that great? It's funny. Anytime I talk to someone in Western Pennsylvania about Andy, the first thing they say is, God, is he really smart? And I couldn't agree more. And then the other thing they say is, God, he's kind of cheap.
But he does a lot. Like the stuff he does is, I mean, he uses very expensive materials on a lot of these jobs. Like, I mean, maybe in his personal life he's not doing that. I don't know.
I think he's just frugal,
Yeah.
right? He doesn't like spend money he doesn't need to, and he can fix anything. So, I mean, like those kind of folk,
Like that
they get
old-
that reputation.
Yeah, like he bought that old Airstream trailer that we gutted.
I think
I'd love
that's
to see
still
what that
gutted.
looks like.
He tells me his wife doesn't know how many things he has like around in different buildings he has rented. He bought a pair of those, you know, those 6x6 or 6x all-terrain vehicles that used to exist in the 70s and 80s that you kind of steer like a tank.
Like
they
a
used to be
coupe?
they used to be in the back of every Popular Mechanics magazine. And when I was a kid, I was like absolutely had to have one, right?
Yeah.
No, he has 2 of those that he's trying to make working too.
Were these like the articulating in the middle type, or just the straight little
Just a
tiny
straight.
tracks?
And
Okay.
they're like, I think they can actually go in water too. I forget what the brand was, but it's one of those things that kind of went away with ATVs. You know, like now everyone has a side-by-side or a quad. Like they don't have this thing anymore. All right, so George from Ossipee, New Hampshire. Did I say that right, Kiley?
Ossipee? Sounds right. I'm not familiar with it.
He says, what would you suggest for a shop floor? I'm building a 900 square foot shop in the basement of my new home. The floor is concrete. Would you suggest rubber mats over the concrete, wood sleepers with 2 layers of plywood, dimple mat with a commercial flooring, or something else? FHB articles have suggested no vapor barrier to allow the floor to breathe. Is this especially true for newly poured floors? Should I wait 6 months before putting flooring down? I would appreciate your advice. I'm a longtime subscriber to Fine Homebuilding, Fine Woodworking, and Fine Gardening. All 3 publications are great, and the podcasts are a great source of info. Thanks, George.
You don't hear that too often, all 3.
Yeah.
I was telling Carol, so my wife Carol works at Fine Gardening. Some of you might not know listening out there, but I told her about George's sentiment. She was also appreciative. Do we really say that you should not have a vapor barrier?
I wondered about that.
Well, I think he's talking about on top of the concrete. We're definitely saying you got to put it immediately
Underneath.
below.
Yeah, that's a must.
Yeah.
And we don't know if his floor is insulated. We're hoping it was, since this is a new build, right? But if it's not, the concrete is going to be a condensing surface in the summertime, and it's going to, going to be not good for your machinery to sit on a wet floor.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Rubber mats.
I think so too. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you guys.
I mean, it's like anti-fatigue mats.
Yeah,
you know, it'll be
for that reason
comfortable.
alone.
You know, they're easy to clean, and they're not going to rot, and it's really like, you know.
And it's going to cost a fraction of what putting subflooring and all this stuff down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if the concrete does get wet, it doesn't care. Concrete doesn't need to breathe. It's not going to rot. It actually, like, I mean, if it's wet over time, I mean, you know, that just helps with the hydration of the cement in the concrete, and it will just get stronger over time anyway.
I didn't know
So
that.
it's not really a problem.
You're saying new concrete, if it's not dried too quickly, will actually be stronger than new concrete that is baked.
Yeah, well, and I think that, you know, I mean, this is what I've been told. I don't know that this is true, but that, you know, concrete will continue to gain strength over time, like as the, you know,
For years,
whatever,
That's
you
so
know,
cool. I didn't know that.
leftover
Yeah.
stuff is in there, hydrates. So,
Pelazoans? Am I saying
the
that?
pozzolans?
Pozzolans.
I think those are additives, but I think it's more the cement that is what's, you know, if there's leftover cement that hasn't hydrated.
Okay, I believe it. Yeah, so when you place concrete and finish it, you're supposed to cure it, which is keeping it moist.
Yeah.
And what they say, concrete curing is like a baby. You don't want it to be too cold, too wet, or too hot. So we heard from Diami, our roofing friend from Islip, New York. Do you remember Diami?
Yeah, I've never actually met him, I don't think.
Do you know Diami?
No. Mm-mm.
So Diami is a commercial roofer, and we've done pieces on rubber roofing on a little residential structure. We did a chimney flashing repair, but he's a friend of our podcast.
Yep.
Hi, FHB crew. I know it's been a few years since heat pump water heaters were reviewed, and if I remember correctly, the top-rated one is no longer available. What model would you currently recommend for a heat pump water heater? So should we talk about what a heat pump water heater is first and what it does?
Sure, go ahead. It's a heat pump that heats water. It takes the heat out of your basement or wherever you have it.
Yep.
And
It
pumps
uses
into
the
water.
refrigeration cycle, right? You're compressing a gas and letting it absorb heat to take heat from the air and then heat the water with it.
Right. It's like an air conditioner in reverse.
And it's not heating air, it's heating water. So it's like a water conditioner.
Yeah.
It's not really like that either.
Reverse water conditioner.
So what's the plus with these?
They're much more energy efficient than like a resistive coil in a
Electric tank.
a conventional electric water heater. They can lower the humidity in your
basement?
in your basement. They
Yep.
can
I
keep
didn't know
it cool.
that. That's cool.
But yeah, they do. You do have to sort of like have a space that's relatively warm to run them in because they do cool the space. But yeah, I mean, I tried looking it up on Consumer Reports because I have a subscription to that. They only had tested one, but it performed way better than any other water heater that they tested.
Performed how?
In terms of, across all the categories that they looked at, you know, like energy consumption and I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. But I mean, because you can measure performance in a water heater a number of different ways, right? Energy efficiency is one. How much hot water you get is another.
Yeah. Yep.
These are all things that are important to people who need hot water.
And they did look at all that. If you have a Consumer Reports subscription, go look at that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the overall score, it got a 96 out of 100, and like the next best performing water heater was like in the 60s.
Do you
what
remember?
was it?
Do you remember what that was?
It was some Rheem model.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So I did a little digging into actual heat pump water heaters this morning.
Yeah.
So the one originally that we thought was going to change the industry came from General Electric.
Yeah.
And the big difference with that one was it was finally affordable, right? With incentives in Connecticut, you could get one for about $500 for a period of time.
Man.
And
Just paid
that is really close to what it costs for, you know, a big box quality electric resistant style tank water heater, right? But then after developing this, GE decided that they were going to get out of the water heater business, and Bradford White bought their manufacturing equipment and the technology from them, and now they're making it. And what is it called?
Aerotherm.
The Aerotherm series heat pump water heater. And the one I looked at, it comes in two sizes. There's an 80-gallon and a 50-gallon. The 80-gallon has an 87-gallon first hour rating. And do you know what that refers
I was just
to?
about to ask you.
So that's like you start with a tank of hot water. How many gallons of hot water can you get out of it before you don't have hot water anymore?
Yeah.
And so it's the amount of water in the tank, which is 80 gallons. And then there's an assumption that the heater can make some hot water while you're drawing out of it, but then eventually it can't keep up anymore. So 87 is a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hot water. For comparison, their resistance style, tank style water heater has a 65-gallon first hour rating, but that's a 50-gallon tank. You just
a lot
can't.
of water.
So one of the things that the heat pump water heaters do to make up for what is a slower recovery time, it takes longer to make the heat than it does with an electric element, is they have much bigger tanks.
Okay.
So this is an 80-gallon, and that would be, I think they say, equivalent to like a 50 resistance style.
Okay.
So what does all this technology cost? You want to take a stab at what the...
It better be more than the $1,000 that I just spent. That's all I want to know.
So the 80-gallon model costs $2,000, and the 50-gallon model costs $1,400. And so you were talking about how they are more efficient at making hot water. So this has an efficiency factor of 3.4. It varies a little bit between the two models, but compare that to the electric, which is 0.95. So you're almost getting 3 times the amount of hot water, well, more than 3 times the amount of hot water for the same dollar of electricity you purchase.
Yeah, and that's one thing Consumer Reports did say is that, you know, even though they do cost a bit more up front, the payback is very short because the savings is so great. But I don't know.
So
do you have to do anything special to install them?
they need an electric hookup, but so does any tank's electric tank water
Beyond
heater.
that, though.
And the space needs to be big enough for it to operate correctly, because if it cools the air too much, then it's not going to work as well as if it was warmer.
Yeah.
So you have to have the right basement or
Enough space. Yeah, it's like I've seen some need like 1,000 square feet or cubic feet, I should say, of air, and I'm sure others probably have different requirements. But
this Bradford White model I saw and can be purchased with a remote air intake, right? So if you don't have a big enough space, you can actually draw it from some other part of the house with some restrictions, but it can solve that problem.
Draw it from your sauna. Solve all your problems.
What about if you hooked it up to the furnace?
Yeah, just put it in the same room with the furnace. That way it's got a constant supply of relatively warm air.
So
yeah, I could have done that.
So I ask you, Kiley, did your plumber give you the option of installing one of these when he came to look at your water heater?
He did not. And in fact, I feel really... I thought about this after the fact. He didn't even ask me what I wanted. And I was just so concerned with getting it replaced that I didn't think, I'm not into products like you guys are. So I was like, okay, yeah, replace it.
Yep.
And it's definitely an upgrade from what I had. But at the same time, yeah, he should have, I think, talked to me about my options. And, all I said was, how much is it going to cost?
Well, for many folk, that is the most important thing, right?
Right, but still, you should know what your options are. Yeah.
So I explored one the last time I replaced my water heater. And at the time, GE was still making the heat spring?
Geospring.
Geospring.
Yeah.
And Aero Spring, Heat, Geospring. And it was just too much money for me to justify. I run a dehumidifier in my basement almost all the time, except in the heating season. So it would make a lot of sense for me.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't bring myself to spend 3 times the amount, because you can make a lot of hot water with $1,000 worth of electricity. I would argue years.
Yeah.
So how long ago did you replace yours?
I bet it's been 2 years now.
So 4 more years and you can upgrade.
Right.
Because I'm told not to expect it to last more than 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And I was expecting that we would get longer warranties on the heat pump water heater, given that they cost more, but
What
you
are they
don't.
typically?
6 years. So just for comparison, I went to the Cadillac, well, actually, I'd say the Mercedes of heat pump water heaters, and that's made by Stiebel Eltron.
Stiebel.
Should know the German
Yeah.
resident would know better how to say Stiebel Eltron.
Stiebel.
Stiebel.
Yeah.
So this is the one the folks put in their passive houses, right? Mm-hmm. And this guy costs about $2,000, but you get a 10-year warranty. It's got an electric anode, so it'll never need serviced. And as I understand it, and we might have some angry GBA readers here tell me I'm wrong, but this is the only one that doesn't have a resistance element for backup to maintain, to get hot water faster, right? If you completely empty this, it'll kick on the resistance element in addition to the heat pump to make hot water faster. But this one is all heat pump as I understand it.
Mm-hmm. Man.
Exciting, right?
A lot to know about heating your water.
So I don't know if it's at all helpful to Diami, but I would tell Diami to just buy any one of these if you can afford it, right?
Yeah. Who else makes them?
I don't know.
I think it looks like A.O. Smith may still make some, and obviously Rheem, which I brought up before, but I have no idea which is, good.
And honestly, so the thing about these kind of things is like none of these companies like make the compressor that runs the refrigeration cycle, for example. They're buying it from a Chinese company, and they probably all have largely the same ones. I've heard that there are some companies that buy better ones, but it's a consumer product. It's probably not going to be that much different, and the warranties are all the same. So I would say just get one or you can, and get one that you can get parts for locally. That's something to keep in mind. The Stiebel Eltron is going to be hard to find something at the local supply house to fix it if it fails, I betcha. Mm. Okay, so Greg writes in, my name is Greg. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm restoring the cedar clapboards on the rear of my 100-year-old house. I'm removing the old siding, installing house wrap, and reinstalling the old cedar onto vertical furring strips to allow for better ventilation of the wood. Do you have any thoughts on using PVC or cement trim in conjunction with cedar clapboard? Because of the difficulty in sourcing quality old-growth wood, I was thinking of trimming around the windows and vertically along the exterior house corners with 5/4 PVC trim. And my concern that was maybe the differential expansion and contraction of material may lead to water penetration. Any thoughts would be much appreciated. Thanks, Greg.
Thoughts?
Me first?
Do it.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Just if you used any old wood or PVC or
PVC,
cement,
fine with clapboards. We see it all the time. Most of the projects in fine home building now have some kind of synthetic trim, I would say. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, there's a lot of Boral True Exterior is one that people like a lot. I mean, it has almost no expansion or contraction. It can be run right down to grade.
That is exceptional, right? That is something that no other trim I know of, excepting PVC, allows you to actually be touching concrete or masonry, or you can bring it right down to roof shingles if you have an intersecting roof and stuff. And these are all things people complain about with other fiber cement products, is you need to leave 2 inches between the ends of the siding and anything that gets wet.
Yeah, at least.
At least.
Yeah, and in some conditions it's at least 4 inches, I think.
God.
Yeah.
It looks like heck.
Right, yeah, you have these big gaps.
Sounds like he was concerned about the movement. We have a piece called Work Smart with PVC Trim that deals with how to, optimal conditions for, working with it.
And that probably talks about how you need to account for the temperature when you install it, right? And then how to fasten it to allow for the movement and not come unglued.
Yeah, because it does move quite a bit. There's also Fipon, if you wanted to do that. What is that? Like a polyurethane
with a skin on it.
Yeah. And that stuff, it's heck to work with. But it seems to last forever.
And very expensive.
It is
very expensive for what I think it is.
Yeah.
But it doesn't rot, and it comes in very crisp profiles that are often appropriate for historic homes. So if you're trying to have the fluted columns on your colonial or your Edwardian or whatever, that product offers those kind of things.
Yeah, and it's real light. That's
Super
one nice
light.
thing. It's like carrying around styrofoam.
Then
And
why is it
glue
hard
it,
to
right?
work with?
Yeah.
I've never used it.
Yeah, when I've used it before, it hangs with glue, but I think you got to screw it essentially to hold it while the glue
sets up.
sets. Yeah.
What else should we tell Greg? I don't think that, you're going to have a rain screen anyway, so if you have any water infiltration, like all homes do, that's not going to be an issue, right? Jack from Cedarhurst, New York, writes, "Hey all, love the podcast. Thank you for your insight and knowledge. I recently bought a 1920 Cape in Long Island, New York, that is in need of some serious work. There's an old mismatched roof, leaking windows, the works. It has some of the original 9-light basement windows and 6/1 double hungs on the main floor, but most of the windows were replaced with terrible vinyl replacement windows. I'm planning on a re-roof, new windows and siding. Where could I go to find reading material on proper look and appropriate styles for the period? I don't want to butcher this renovation, and I would love for it to look more historically accurate. This mismatched, cobbled-together style has making me nuts." So I would never call this a cape, right?
Yeah.
So what are the identifying characteristics of a cape? It's got a lot of roof.
A lot of roof, right? Typically
like
single story.
Arranged parallel to the front elevation, right? And it's got like a story and a half. And I think when he was talking about cape, I think he means that like the second floor is under roof and not a full story. That's my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, this doesn't. I hadn't seen the picture. This does not look like a cape.
It's not a cape.
I would say it's some kind of eclectic combination of a Foursquare and Craftsman.
I'd say craftsman-y, yeah. And it's working class, right? This was not a expensive home when it was built. But it's darn cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got some good resources for him.
Lay it on us.
One is called Restoring Your Historic House by Scott Hanson, and it's written specifically for DIYers, and it's loaded with information on style elements and hundreds of how-to photos and illustrations and project examples. It's a really great book. It was
Cool.
sent to me sent here to the office, but I snagged it.
I want to see that.
It's really fantastic. It's pretty atypical in its offerings, I think. And then there's the classic Field Guide to American Houses by Virginia Mccallister. That's just, that's the Bible of if you want to understand styles and all the details of them,
The period.
The period, yeah. This is the go-to. And there's another one, I actually just heard a talk by this author, American House Styles by John Milnes. And he's traveled the country extensively and has documented a lot of different house styles, and he's fascinating to listen to. But the illustrations in that book are pretty helpful. So I don't know, for getting ideas, I think those are good resources.
Do you have any suggestions, Mr. Matt?
No, I didn't realize that this was the
house.
The house.
Until then.
So you researched the wrong house.
Yeah, I researched the wrong house.
So if you were restoring a cape, what would you...
But old house, there's a couple online resources that are somewhat helpful for getting like traditional, maybe not details, but at least sort of like the basics of like what these things should look like. Oldhouseonline.com and antiquehome.com are both decent. I would say Old House Online tends to have a lot more information specific to the style that you're probably looking for.
Yeah.
We'll put that link in the podcast page.
And if he's going to replace all the windows and doors, Marvin has a line of historic replica windows and doors that he should take a look at. I know they're expensive, but if he wants to do that.
Yeah.
Can we go back to that house, Jeff? See, I don't think this house is terribly screwed up.
No.
It needs all the stuff pulled off of it. It needs the aluminum siding or whatever that is to go, and it needs to have the aluminum soffit and fascia ripped off, and you're probably going to find a bunch of rotted boards, and you're going to be tempted to cover it with aluminum again. But
It needs to
that
unify
second
the
floor
wood.
window with that porch roof running right into it is a little problematic, but I mean, you see that.
I bet that house was built that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you see that quite a bit.
You think the porch was enclosed?
No, I think it was a porch.
That's what I mean. But do you think it was open?
I do. I think it was open originally, and I think someone closed it in, which is so common, right? It's such easy living space to grab, and when your family's growing, that's like, Dad's like, I need my own space.
Yeah.
I like the hipped eave returns.
God, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
I think the overhangs are one of the best features of this house. And I like the little doghouse dormers on the side, too. I think that's awesome. So I would rip all the stuff off the porch, make it a porch again. I would pull the aluminum off the fascia and soffits and evaluate the siding. And if I could swing it, I would pull that, whatever's on there now. And I bet there's wood clapboard under there and maybe some shingles on the gables. What's the back look like, Jeff?
I don't think those photos are in there.
No.
I was looking for them,
Is this
too.
the only one?
Yeah, I mean, there's basically
They have three
it's like
shots
a
of the same
drive-by.
view.
Yeah.
When did exposed foundation walls like that become more prevalent?
I don't know.
Because that's a awfully high elevation for,
Yeah.
right? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, because people probably can't see this. There's probably 4 feet of stem wall just
Right.
exposed before it gets to siding.
I think I know why that's like that. Because
Yeah.
it's easier to dig a 5-foot deep hole than it is to dig an 8-foot deep hole. So
Yeah,
on an
probably-
inexpensive home, you dig down 5 feet, but you need 7 or 8 foot to have room enough to stand in the basement.
Yeah.
And you just put that part above grade.
Yeah, they probably went to the bare minimum of
Yeah.
whatever they had to dig, which is 4 or 5 feet.
I don't see that very often. Maybe it's because of where I live.
Yeah, I don't know.
So most folks now, and it's easier to dig a hole now than it used to be,
True.
right?
Yeah.
You'll do this, but then you'll take the spoil from the excavation and then build it back up around the concrete foundation once the foundation is in, and you get good drainage away from the house that way, and you don't have to get rid of truckloads of soil.
Yeah, but this is also on Long Island, so that entire island is
Sand.
sand and cobblestones, and I mean it's all just glacial
Phil.
stuff that just got dumped there. I've had to drill a lot of holes in Long Island, and it is not fun.
What do
You
you-
never know what you're going to hit.
What do you hit?
I mean, you hit rock, like gigantic rocks. Sometimes
Does that
you
stop
go
a drilling rig?
It definitely makes it harder. I mean, you can put a cat's paw on there and just kind
What's
of
a cat's
rip
paw?
it. It's basically just like the 3 like knobby heads that sort of rotate and like grind up the rock as it's going down.
So as it's spinning, these like discs are churning it up.
They're like almost like balls, yeah, and they just kind of rotate as the thing rotates.
So
and
do you get to
chew it
build a
all up.
client a change order when you have to break out the cat's paw?
No, I think you just build based on how many hours you're out there.
For some reason,
Okay.
I thought Long Island would have a lot of fill.
There's a lot of that too. There's a lot of weird stuff out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
It seems like
So I've heard that is
man-made
the
place.
terminus of North American glaciation. It's just a big sandbar that was pushed there by glaciers. Is that correct?
yeah. I mean, so you have boulders, you have like rocks of all different sizes and sand and clay and whatever else was pulverized or pulled down in those glaciers and sort of like melted out of the ice and just settled there. So yeah.
sounds lovely.
So I was
So it can
looking
be
at
hard to dig, is what I'm saying.
yeah, right.
In
So
some places, depending where you are.
maybe they got to the big boulder and just decided that was far enough,
Yeah.
right? And like, okay, let's put that above grade. Do you think that was helpful to Jack?
I think he's got some good reading to do,
Okay.
resources to work with, right?
Yeah.
Jack, let us know what you do with this house. I'd love to see it. And it's cute. I think you did good buying that. It's a nice little house. So I wanted to remind everyone to join us for the Keep Craft Alive networking event in Las Vegas during the International Builder Show. You guys are going to be there, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. You get a chance to meet us all. Woo!
Prepare to be underwhelmed. Yeah.
Fine Homebuilding will be hosting a fun evening of networking and fundraising on Wednesday, January 22nd from 5:30 to 8:30 at the Craft and Community Bar and Grill and the Hard Rock Hotel in Las Vegas. Come support the Fine Homebuilding and Skills USA Scholarship Fund. Enjoy craft beer, food, and swag bags. There will be giveaways and a chance to meet great builders and tradespeople from around the country. Proceeds help support Keep Craft Alive Skills USA Scholarship Fund for trade school students. To register, go to Keep Craft Alive at ibs2020.com. I guess not. Keep Craft Alive IBS 2020. The Builder Show was the last one was the first of several awesome get-togethers we had, right? So we had the Builder Show last year. We had the FHB Summit, the JLC Live Show in Providence, right?
Yep.
And then there were several Keep Craft Alive local meetups. I know there was one in. Didn't you go to one in Colorado?
I went to one in Denver last year. Justin went this year. Yep.
And now there's the Patrick meetup group.
But one cool thing about this event too is that a lot of other like Fine Home Building contributors and like I don't know, Instagram influencers and
Yep.
stuff like that show up. So you get to meet probably, I don't know if Tyler Grace is going to be there, but all the Modern Craftsman guys. Mike Girton is at these, or at least he was there last year. There's just a lot of cool people, and it's just a lot of good conversation, and it's just fun to hang out with these people in a non-work setting.
Totally.
A lot of plaid and beards.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too.
I think
it's fun.
It's a fun party.
Yeah,
like
it
it
is
is definitely one of the best parties I've been to, I gotta say.
Yeah.
And I've been to some good ones. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Matt, Kiley, and Jeff for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us. However you're listening, it helps other folks find our podcast. Keep craft alive. Happy building.